I started at Katara Studios as a producer, but I've navigated my way into a role where it's to help individuals with their careers in the company. It's interesting times for creativity. Having nobleness and integrity, a team environment, and delivering something, I think that's where the beauty and the success is at. Working hard and being successful at building relationships, that's what helped me in the media space. I'm so blessed and grateful to be able to work in a place where there are a lot of creative minds. But at the end of the day, there are objectives to be met. It's all for one and one for all. You have to navigate your way.
Hi, I'm Lafan and welcome to Ajyal Show Season 2. Today we're tackling one of the hardest questions maybe you've had to ask yourself at some point. How do you manage authenticity without compromising creativity and vice versa? Today we're joined with someone who has been immersed in the media industry for years, from radio to producing to now being head of creative and talent management at Katara Studios. In this episode, we'll be delving into kind of answering that question for really what it is. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our special guest, George Chalouhi. Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
No, of course.
I'm going to do my best to try and answer those questions.
How's your day going so far? Yeah.
Fantastic. Couldn't be better.
I would love it if you could tell me a little bit about where you started. You know, everyone has a start somewhere, so please.
Long story short, I graduated from the American University of Beirut, sociology, minor in communication, not knowing what I want to do. My parents wanted me to be a doctor. I said, yeah, I'll be a doctor, sure. I was ranked 356 out of 360. It's terrible. So I went to my dad and I said, I can't become a doctor. It's not who I am. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I have no idea. I don't know. He goes, what do you love? I said, I love people. I love socializing. So I studied sociology, and my dad advised me to take communication, media and communication, because it did so well for him, and he was so good at it. So I did that. Graduated, came to Qatar, and he took me under his wing, onto the TV, reading the news in English. I thought I was a hot shot then, you know. I was wearing a suit. I'm on national televised TV, reading the news. I worked hard. I learned quick. And I knew that I had to make my father proud, which I did. I did very quickly. I was on QBS and quickly learned the ropes there, had my own radio show, single, young. I was doing something that nobody was doing at the time at my age here in Qatar. Yes, there were a couple of people, up-and-coming young women that were reading the news, but also on the radio. But I was the only guy of that age doing that and doing it in my own way. Being 26, reading the news, having your own radio show, you're thinking to yourself, yeah, this is it. But I want more, right? So the more came to me in a very odd way. A friend of a friend advised a director who was coming here to speak to me to be a translator. British director, Peter Weber, was coming here to do a film for National Day, and he needs somebody to translate. So I took that upon myself to start something new. I don't know if I would have done it if he wasn't a big director at the time. You know, he had recently done Girl with a Pearl Earring, Oscar-nominated film. So I did it because he was famous, and I wanted to rub shoulders with fame because I thought that was the next step after reading the news, which became boring. Translated, loved the cameras and the lights and the attention that certain individuals got on set, the director, the first AD, and the whole environment, you know, of hierarchy when it came to filmmaking. That's what drew me in. So I resigned from the TV and the radio eventually, and I became a freelancer fixer, helping directors, production companies that were coming into Qatar at the time with anything that they needed, sourcing camels, cars, speaking to individuals, organizing meetings. So from a fixer to a production assistant to an assistant producer. Then I navigated towards becoming a first AD because I liked to be the center of attention at the time. I wanted my voice to be heard. And the first AD on the set, based on my experience, was somebody that everybody listened to. So my ego was full, and I was loving it and making really good money, even by today's standards. Freelancer at that time. I was very good at what I did. I worked really hard. But I did it because it fed my ego. And it made my mother proud, right? I'll fast forward a bit. That turned into great relationships with individuals within the industry. I mean, I'm very proud to say that I've worked with everybody in the country, you know, in some capacity. You can name a person, I can give you a story about how we worked together. I don't think anybody has had that luxury. So for that, I'm eternally grateful. But one of the best relationships I had and still have is with the people at Katara Studios. I started at Katara Studios as a producer, as a senior producer. But I've navigated my way with the help of the understanding of Katara Studios leadership into a role where it's labeled as head of creative and talent management. What I'm trying to do, to the best of my ability in that role, is to help individuals within the company, within the creative team, whether it's a graphic designer, whether it's a writer, director, to help them individually with their careers in the company and outside of the company. It's a very interesting role. It's a very difficult role to get right. I think at this day and age, we can talk about that if you like. That's who I am in a nutshell, where I started and where I am now.
Seems like an amazing journey, and I can't wait. It
has been, and alhamdulillah, I'm very grateful.
Actually, I'm quite interested to ask you about kind of the differences between maybe studying mass communication and then actually getting into the field of media. I'm sure that there are some things, that you've probably learned in that university hall that...
Such a good question. Such a good question. I don't remember what I studied. I wasn't the student that was just naturally gifted where you just soak up that information. You're like, wow, that's interesting. I wasn't at that stage. I was very premature when it came to that. My brother, who's an ENT surgeon, was like that. Mm-hmm. My sister, who has a PhD in Middle Eastern Studies, was like that. I wasn't. I just went to university because I was expected to go to university because I wanted to make my parents proud. I mean, I even sat at the table with my dad once saying, Dad, I don't want to go to university. I wasn't inclined to study, but I did it, and I did just enough to pass because that's who I was. I mean, if I reflect on that now, what I cared about was socializing with people, getting to know people. I mean, I could tell you stories about people that were in class with me. I can remember the professor, his name, what he looked like, what he smelled like, what he wore, how he spoke. But anything out of a textbook. But there are elements within the education that I took that definitely helped me. And that was all based on human interaction. And working hard, respecting the other person, and being successful at building relationships. That's what helped me in the media space. When I was reading the news on QTV, I made sure that I said hi to every single person that was involved in making sure that I went out on that TV screen, whether it was before we went live or after we went live. And I don't think that's something that's necessarily done by news anchors, right? There's a certain gravitas that my dad was, he was one of the first to do it in Qatar. And he was, if you look back on YouTube, you type in my dad's name, you'll see him just talking eloquently. And he was, putting on an accent, and he was going to, so I wasn't like that. I think that helped me. I had a humbleness, although I had an ego for myself. I did have a humbleness about me where I like to see other people succeed as well. So the social skills that were given to me at university, where my parents, American University of Beirut, a great university, great campus, the socializing there is what helped me within the media field. I think nowadays I would have to guess that the educational element is quite important when it comes to media. But again, it's about knowing who you are as an individual and spearheading the qualities that you know are true to yourself. And I think God opens the path for people that are honest with themselves. I hope I've answered your question.
You have. And honestly, the fact that you've been able to reap the social aspect of kind of being in university, I'm curious to hear how you maybe applied that when you first started out in QTV or QBS radio. So did those kind of skills somehow translate or kind of develop throughout your experience at QTV and QBS radio?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, especially with QBS radio. I mean, I was able to, what I like to believe, excel quite quickly on the radio. Because the interviews that I conducted, the feedback I got was, George, that was so natural, that was so good. You got information out of the American ambassador in such a natural way. When you conduct yourself on your show, you're talking to the listeners in a very, from your heart, right? Because you could easily talk like this and welcome to, so I never did that. And there were pauses and there were silences. So I was really giving my true self. And I was taught to be true the hard way in university, because when I tried to be somebody I wasn't, people would tell me, you're not being yourself. So authenticity, noble integrity is what I've been carrying with me all this time. Sometimes it was lost along the way, and I got slapped in the face figuratively.
And then how was the shift moving from radio to producing? I would imagine.
It was so exciting. It was so exciting because nobody ever saw me on radio, right? You could hear me, that's fine. But the interaction wasn't massive. You'd get messages online. Hey, George, good morning. So good to hear your voice. Play the song. So the socializing aspect of my job at the time was limited. I would be there reading the news, but it would always be the same team, and that was great. But I would come in, look over the script, read, and we're off air. Thank you, George. Thank you. And that's it. So that was my job. I was also teaching English at the same time. I was teaching English as a foreign language to young kids. That was satisfying. That's something I hope to start doing towards the end of my life, is teach or give back, return in some aspect. But when it came to the film, it was constant talking, communicating, succeeding. I found the camels. Oh, I got this. I got the Dow. I got it for a lower price. Really? Wow, George, you're a star. At that time, recognition and a pat on the back from the Western field of filmmaking is not something I was used to, right? So if the director looks at me and goes, George, fantastic. How'd you get that? Really good job. And the only time I heard that was through my dad when I was a kid. Dad, I got high marks. Habibi, really bravo. But you don't get recognition along the way. You really don't. Maybe it's from your friends at university, but your friends. But from a stranger or a coworker, getting it from award-winning people, that was, whoa, I matter. You know, I can do something, you know, that other people can really appreciate. That change from radio to is that people noticed me outside of me having a microphone or a screen, which acted as a medium for me to be noticed. But now I was noticed on a film set. It felt good.
The fact that you've mentioned that you've taught and that you think recognition is this really important thing that's lacking in the industry, I'd love to hear in your role now as at the head of creative and talent management in Qatar, how these kind of coincide together.
In Katara Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I think that is at the core of what I do. As time progresses, from what I've seen, individuals are becoming their own bosses. And rightfully so. They want to be the masters of their own destiny, especially in a creative space. They want to decide for themselves as adults how they're going to conduct themselves at work, within their work, and how they're going to deliver. I think long gone are the days in our creative space where you have a 9 to 5 and you have somebody who's in charge and telling you what to do. It hinders productivity, it hinders growth, it hinders creativity. So I think my title is a little misleading, head of creative and talent management, you know. I'm trying to facilitate to the best of my ability the individuals in the company to make sure that they're happy with what they're doing. And I do that by throwing positive reality their way. Because we can get down on ourselves. Our minds are just always going at it, right? It's just going at it, and it's just going to, especially when you're a creative. So I'm a very content person in my life, alhamdulillah. I'm in a very good place. I can use that stature by feeding it in places that are needed. So I do that in my place of work to the best of my ability. How I utilize that, because that's more socializing the workspace, but for the individuals in the company, I will let them know that what they're doing is as good as it gets, and they're doing a really good job. Can they do better? Yeah, they could do better. But I'm always there for them if they need any advice. You'd be surprised nobody ever comes to me for advice, as much as I thought they would. But when they do, it's gratifying. That's the role that I'm trying to develop. You know, this is a position that I haven't held for a very long time. I was a producer, senior producer at Katara Studios. So this is something new that I think I can really develop, and a lot of people can benefit from, and in turn I can benefit because I'm learning from them as much as I hope they're learning from me.
Coming from someone myself who is actually in the creative field, I have a question particularly that I'd like to ask. Is that how do you balance like keeping that creativity alive within the team of young creatives when you have things like deliverables and something that's quite subjective? Because at the end of the day, you know, when you're working in the creative space, sometimes you're making things and every person has an opinion. How do you kind of balance that, making sure that they still have that creative rejuvenation ready to go?
I believe you're born a creative or you're not. I'm a creative person when it comes to conversations. I'm a creative person when it comes to the kitchen. I'm not very creative when it comes to film. I might have some creative input. But my point is, a lot of people will force themselves in thinking that being a creative is the almighty and I am a creative. In order to be a creative, you have to be born a creative. It's not something that you switch on or off. You just like that. You can't switch it off. You're always coming up with ideas. If a person can understand that, then I think that's the first step of succeeding as a creative. If you're not a creative when it comes to filmmaking, then you can fill one of the roles that aids the creative person or entity At Katara Studios, I'm so blessed and grateful to be able to work in a place where there are a lot of creative minds, right? And there's creative juices flowing everywhere. There are ideas flowing left and right. But at the end of the day, there are objectives to be met. And, that's to tell local stories, cultural stories in a very modern way. But to keep tradition at the heart. So I can't speak in general and answer that question in general, but I can speak towards at Katara Studios. Collaboration. Knowing when to help, why you're helping, and when to step aside and to understand that this idea is a better idea for the goal that we're going for at this time. Communication, I think, is the answer. Honest communication with each other.
On the topic of communication and collaboration, I'm sure at Katara Studios you guys have the opportunity to work with a lot of local talents. And I'm curious to hear about kind of the collaborative experience with local talents and why you think it's something important for us to be doing.
What do you mean by local talents?
So people who are, for example, from Qatar that want to kind of tell their stories, they want to you want to kind of shine a light on kind of traditional here in Qatar.
Let's say it's anybody that calls Qatar home. Should
Let's
we answer
that,
it that way?
Yeah.
And I say it that way because Qatar is home for me. I've been here since 1979. But working with local talent, I think first and foremost, we have to understand that there are many individuals that call Qatar home, right? And we've had the ability at Katara Studios to be in a position where we have, and we should continue to help local talent. Can we do more? Yes. Can DFI do more? Yes. We can always do more. And that's a great place to be where you can always do more to help. To give a few examples of local talent, Amal Muftah is a close friend of mine. I'm proud to say that I produced her first film ever, right? Simacha. Amal is just a phenomenal human being. And from that phenomenal stance of a human being, she's a great visionary. And she wants to apply her visionaryism, should we use
Works,
it?
Yeah.
Through film. And she's so authentic about what she wants to do. And she's so courageous in how she positions herself. But Amal is a naturally born phenomenon, in my point of view. And that's one type of talent that Qatar has that I think we haven't tapped because we're so distracted, I think. I think if there was an entity just solely focused on finding the talents and what kind of talents they are, that'd be a great entity to have. But we don't have that yet, right? You have Ahmed al-Bakr, of course, close friend of mine. I was lucky enough to start with him very early on in his career. I've worked with him for the past 15 years. He's a born talent. He's born that way. Listen, I can go on and on and on, but there's so many individuals. Fahad al-Kuwari is a born talent. That guy will not switch off. He will not switch off. He was born to create things. But each person is a different talent in their own right and very different from each other. So, yeah, we as Katara Studios are so lucky to have the individuals that I've mentioned as part of the team. And I think the future is bright for, listen, Qatar, is at the helm of so many things. You have DFI. I'm a huge fan. I think what you guys are doing is amazing. There's so much success that you guys do that people don't really hear about. I mean, if you go into the details of what projects you're a part of, I mean, you're hitting home runs with a lot of them, right? But there is more that you can do, which is great. There is Be In, there's Todd. We have, as a country, a stake in Miramax, and wow, there's a lot going on. There's Katara Studios now. There's Media City Qatar. We have the ability to sit at a table, in my point of view, and make sure that local talent is taken care of. I hope that happens, because there's many places for local talent to go, whether you're a Qatari citizen or whether you call Qatar home. The future is so bright for local talent. And yeah, Katara Studios is very grateful to be able to be a part of that. So I look forward to the improvements that we can do as an entity to recognize local talents and help local talent.
I think kind of part of the things that you were saying about collaboration, I think is something that we can all definitely do as creatives and in creative spaces to amplify that. And I especially think, which is something that I want to ask you about actually, is how do you navigate that type of collaboration when you have kind of like a, let's say, a business goal at the end of a project that you're working on with creatives that you're also interacting with? So how do you kind of navigate that type of collaboration?
Navigate the collaboration between whom? The creatives and getting to a business goal?
Yeah, exactly. Like
fantastic producers. Really good producers. You know, there are entities that have existed in Qatar for a very long time that make content creation and film as their business, you know. Resolution Films, longest existing production company. Allah yarhamu Kirby Kearns, you know, who passed away recently, with Simon Ferguson. Great company, right? But their identity is very different from the film house, right? And then you have Poppy at the Edge. That is so those are business focused, right? Katara Studios is different, although we do have a short form section in our company that executes TV commercials, music videos, and more business related projects. The only way that's successful is having a kick-ass producer, right? And we have kick-ass producers. And most of them are young women. You know, as a father of 3 girls, that makes me very proud. But because it's a very interesting question, you brought business into it, right? So it's a profiting, you know, a money profit endeavor. Competition is healthy, and it's interesting because there are times where, as Katara Studios, we believe in our creative, right? So if we have a creative vision, we want the client to believe in it. And we will not be bullied any other way. There will be times where we have to succumb to what the client wants. But we're in a position where we think it's healthy, where we tell the client, you want a creative, leave it to us and trust in us. And when that happens, it's great. And we have great leadership that allows us to operate like that.
I love the creative vision that you said, that if you guys have a creative vision, you kind of stick to it. But I have kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit. How do you actually encourage creatives to push out of that, to kind of go maybe towards the alternative perspectives? Like if you have...
You can't do what you want, but you have to do what the client wants? Is that what you mean?
Or, okay, this is cool, but how can we make it cooler? How do you push the boundaries of maybe someone's initial creative vision when you're in the middle of the process?
We have such good creatives. We really do. We've never... Listen, Ahmed will always challenge, you know. When it comes to creative minds, Ahmed is out there, you know. And to have somebody at that level of creativity that has no boundaries, it always helps. So, you'll go to Ahmed with an idea, and then he'll say, how can you make it better? And then he'll suggest something. Having somebody like that on the team is priceless. But with that said, we have our producer for short form, Cynthia, right? And her team, Ghadir and Lydia. We have Salman as head of communication. Everybody chips in. But what if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do this? So the director has a plethora of individuals around him or her that are suggesting things. So there's an abundancy of ideas, of people being creative. Sometimes they're terrible ideas, mostly coming from me, right? I'll suggest something and everybody just goes, okay, right? That's fine. But I don't think creativity is the difficult part. It's interesting times for creativity. I think having nobleness and integrity in a team environment and delivering something that you have decided upon, I think that's where the beauty and the success is at. I mean, the creativity is being taken away from us in a way as well. You can just feed a prompt into these things and then come up with this creative thing that you would have never thought of. Like, oh, wow, that's insane. That's super creative. Why didn't we think of that? Yeah, well, I think we have to redefine what creativity is and what it means. 100%. But I could be wrong.
I'd like to revisit kind of one of the other hats that you had on in the past, which is being a freelancer. And I kind of
best days. They were the best.
And I want to kind of ask you, like, how you think, we can improve maybe on the ecosystem for freelancers in the modern day today. Like, what do you think that we can maybe do, or what do you think exists right now for them, and what's yet to come due?
Yeah, I don't think our industry would be where it's at without the individuals that work in a capacity of freelancers. They are the bedrock of what we do. Bedrock. At the end of the day, if it wasn't for them, none of this would be where it's at. And I think that's where it should start. I think that's where the industry's bedrock that will be long-lasting, inshallah, that's where it needs to start. You need to create an atmosphere of trust and support for freelancers. That comes in many, many ways. I mean, when I was a freelancer, I was never recognized as the profession I was doing because there was no way to do that. I was working somewhere else, but I had to get a letter to work as a freelancer. And that's fine. That's the way it is. But I believe that's going to change. Freelancers need a body in Qatar to support them, to fight for them, whether it's for their rates, their insurance, their job security. But I also think the freelance market here should be a lot bigger than what it is. And I think the current state of the freelance market here doesn't allow for it to expand more. So you will have, if I was to sit with some of the guys here after we shoot and we talk about the grips in Qatar, or the gaffers in Qatar, or the focus pullers in Qatar, you can name them one hand. And they're all great, and they're all such hard workers. But that's not conducive of an evolving market for freelancers, for their sake and for the freelancers' sake. So bridges, I think, need to be built with countries. I've had the pleasure, and I'm super grateful to be able to work in Tunisia for 8 months, away from my kids and my wife. And Tunisia is a remarkable country. And they have a great history when it comes to filmmaking. And the freelance market there is massive. So a connection could be made there. I mean, Qatar can become a place where freelancers can come and operate, where they can feel safe, secure, and respected. I do believe that's on the horizon. I think you'll be surprised within the next 2 years what's going to happen. But with our freelancers, first and foremost, need to be taken care of. Yeah. Best days, though. Being a freelancer, best days.
How come?
Freedom to do what you want, when you want. Not how you want, obviously, but, you can do this job. And being a freelancer, by definition, you command a high rate, right? And you can be done with that and be like, okay, I'm taking a break for 2 weeks. It's beautiful. It's not so nice when you get married and have kids because you can never take a break, right? When you get married and have kids, you have to climb a constant thing. But listen, the freelance market is where it's at, even for people that graduate. So it's not only for people that are already in the industry, but if you have individuals graduating from Northwestern, from a technical standpoint, imagine if there was a freelance atmosphere that was supported, respected. They would just jump straight into it. Boom, boom, boom. And you will see stories. I know individuals that have done that, and it's great. And they've done that only because the freelancers have supported them, right? So a second AC who's in the freelance market will bring on a third AC, and come on, you can jump on our. That shouldn't be the case. Imagine if there was a body where a person just graduates, says, oh, just graduated. Hey, Ahmed, Rana, great. Yep, you're looking to get in? Okay, welcome to the freelance agency, governmental services, whatever it's called. And then you can get in touch with the projects and the production companies. We have this freelance thing. To have it just organized. You know it works. You're thinking about it now, right? It works. It's just about respecting that, understanding that that's important. So it's not so much about having the people who graduate do an internship at the companies. It's more about having the freelance market being a vehicle for these young graduates to emerge into the market. I think that's a solution.
100%. I mean, something about you that strikes me is kind of your authenticity, and it's really loud, actually, and it's the best thing ever. And I like how
I wasn't always like this.
I like how you're always connecting kind of work with who you are as a person. And sometimes we're quite hesitant in kind of merging those two together. So I would love for you to talk to me a little bit about the person that you are at home versus the person that you are at work. Is that the same person?
That is so, subhanallah, that is so interesting that you would ask that. I've never really done an interview like this before. So naturally at home, twice today, I thought, what if this comes up? What do I answer? This was one of them. And I was very comfortable, and I am very comfortable in telling you that what you see here is exactly what you see at work, and is what is exactly you see at home. Not many, that's all right. That wasn't very true for me a few years ago, right? I used to be a suited up guy with a tie, very strict, because I thought that's what the role needed as an executive producer. But when I was at home, I wasn't like that. My authenticity is because it's very simple. My kids and those that have left Earth as well. I'm of the frame of mind that Rabbna and the angels are always watching. So I'm still on a journey to get to the most authentic version of myself. But I'm in a very good place now where as I'm speaking to you, I'll speak to you the same way if the cameras are off. I'll speak the same way at home. I'll speak the same way at work. I think that's the way forward in terms of how the work atmosphere is, where you but you foster an environment of just being authentic. Katara Studios is like that, to a fault, maybe, sometimes, right? Because it's not so conducive to to your traditional workflows, and but being allowed to be who you are and speak your truth is something I'm very grateful for at Katara Studios.
If I was to tell you in one sentence, right, what is maybe like the biggest added benefit to being your authentic self, even in your workspace? Not that you're separated. What is the added benefit or added value that you feel is something that people should know? Maybe people who are preserving some of the authenticity for whatever reason it might be.
I don't think the authenticity is for the people. I think it's a duty to myself and to my faith to be authentic. But authenticity means rebirth, growing again, letting go of things that are not good for you or for those around you, learning, keeping your mouth shut when it needs to be shut, walking away when you need to walk away, when you're hearing things that have got nothing to do with you, making sure that you speak up in the name of love. And love is a big word, but love means respect. Like if there's people there that are talking about another person, whether it's truth or not, to speak up about that. Let's not do that. So it's I used to do things for other people to notice me, and I always used to think about what people thought about me, and if somebody didn't like me, that bothered me. Why don't you like me? I'm the best version of myself, you know. But that doesn't cross my mind anymore. The only individuals in my life that have those strings to my heart about my authenticity are my kids. And I think that's the reason why I want to be authentic. You know, if they really want to get to know because I don't know who my dad is before I was born, but I want to know. Maybe I'll have that opportunity one day. And if he's very different from the man I know, that'll be interesting. But if my kids are going to be able to see who I was, I want to say, yeah, that's my dad. You know what I mean?
100%.
Being honest with your actions and your thoughts and your heart, I think that's a path that God has laid out for us very beautifully.
On the topic of, because you were going on about how maybe at some point we find ourselves maybe asking ourselves or getting into the pattern of validation, wanting validation from others. And I'm sure in the creative spaces, that's something creatives might feel as well if they need to create something particular that needs to. So how do you, as someone who facilitates the creative space, manage kind of the level of authenticity kind of staying that way despite having kind of that battle of, I need to validate or...
Oh, see, you just said it right there, because you're alluding that to the point that validation is just validation for the sake of validating. It doesn't have to be truthful. But you're validating something just because it makes the person feel better. Right?
Mm.
But validation, at least from my perspective, is in the work that you put. Right? Great job, because you put effort into it. Right? Is the end product good? It's okay not to have an opinion. Sometimes I don't have an opinion about the end result. You don't always have to have an opinion. Only because I choose not to. I'm not lying. I think that we have the ability to watch something. Like, okay, I watched it. But what do you think? So I think to answer your question, sometimes validation comes in a way where I can let that person know, I'm here for you not to tell you that something is good or bad. You know, I'm here to validate your hard work that you've put into something. And to answer your questions, whether you can do something better or not, I can answer those questions. But validating each other as people is where it's at. Validating each other as professionals is being honest. But my honesty is probably definitely not the overall truth. My honesty is different than his honesty. So I think validation comes in a form where you can look at me and I can give you my honest answer. But I can trust that the honest answer I give you, you will take it and be like, okay, interesting. Not, so it's not good. So I'm not a good filmmaker. Our honesty and our authenticity is a form of validation. And how you communicate is it's a form of validation, right? But I think reminding somebody of how good we've got it in such an amazing country, in a field that, let's be honest, is just super cool to work in. And I think it's our job as souls, as children of God, to do that. I'm not doing it because Khalifa goes, oh, George is such a nice guy, you know? Or, you know, I mean, I remember meeting the team, and I validated every single one of them in a certain way because I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing. I think, you know, it's like a smile, but you're communicating it through words. Does that make sense?
That makes 100%. So you're saying that authenticity and validation can exist on the same plane?
Of course. Why not? Tell me otherwise.
I think a lot of times people think that if there's some form of outsider perspective, that it somehow takes away from authenticity, because authenticity is usually always like reflected upon the self and something that comes that's original, this type of thing. But I'd love it if you could kind of tell us a little bit about how authenticity can also include other people. Like, I feel like that's been the core of kind of some
What's
of the
the difference
conversations.
between me and you? Other people. Aren't we one and the same? What is the difference between me and you? You have longer hair, you're of a different gender, but I think we're all made in his image, right? So I don't understand your question. Me validating you is the same as you validating me. Is the same. Me validating you is the same as me validating me. You know, when I speak to you, as God is my witness, I'm speaking to my sister. I'm speaking to my daughter. No, that's not possible. No, it is possible. Just never. But do you know what I'm saying?
I get it, yeah.
Why wouldn't you trust what comes out of my heart, kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times, whether it's a Katara Studios or not, corporate culture is so important. It's so important. And it starts and it exists and it lasts for the smallest of things. The way you say good morning, why you're saying good morning, having a conversation with a person, not because you drank so much caffeine you don't know what to do, but you want to have a normal conversation, talk about work and talk about that. Because people get caught up in their own careers and how they're going to deliver, and my film is going out, and I'm a director, and I'm a producer, and you know. Yeah. Film is life. Life is a film. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, authenticity and validation, beautiful together.
Yeah, I think, you know, the kind of the takeaway that I feel from this conversation is that, you know, sometimes we've been led to believe that it's easy to be more cynical than it is to kind of think,
And
foster that level of, rather than fostering that trust. People find that sometimes, or it's been repeated, that it's easier to be cynical. So I think part of the work that you've been doing, that I think a lot of people will learn a lot from through this conversation.
you're very good
is this
at what you do.
is just fostering
Cynical.
that trust.
It's a listen. I caught myself today. What was it? Somebody was talking about another person, and the inside was like, "Really, tell me more." Like, you know, this bad news. I want to know more. Was it? So, what is it? There's a saying about it, you know. But yeah, you are 100% correct. You know, and it's in our culture. Like, being cynical is something that's a part of us, right? And it's enjoyable, right? I still can't think of the saying, but even like Lebanon right now. شو حيصير وإذا هذا صار رئيس, and so what if this is a prime minister? يعني it's the same thing. That's being cynical, right? Isn't it? Yes? No? No?
I mean, I think cynicism could be, depends on who you ask, really. Like, it depends
No,
on
but
the
I'm asking you.
context.
Being negative towards a situation, is that... No, but I'm asking, is that being cynical? Maybe I don't know what the definition of cynical is. How would we define cynical?
I mean, I would say cynical is maybe always expecting the worst.
So I'm being cynical.
But sometimes you can expect the worst to begin with, so you can kind of see where
So
you
you're
can
being
go
cynical
up
from the
there.
beginning.
Yeah.
I think cynicism is great, but I think you have to be aware of it, when you're using it, with whom you're using it, why you're using it. But you see, I'm not a person that says, oh, being positive is great either, right? I think being real is a nice place to be. I think just being aware of those attributes or being aware of those existences is great, especially as a creative. You know, I think we need to dive deeper into these stories and these elements of who we are as Arabs or as country culture. There's a lot of writing happening now, so all of these elements are going to be in there.
I have enjoyed having this conversation with you,
Me
George.
too. We could go on for hours.
I mean, yeah, for
I went
sure.
off tangent. I'm sorry.
No. It's been an utmost pleasure. The fact that you've been able to kind of have or shine a light on really authenticity, not just as a personal thing that you have in your heart, but something that you can also share with others, I think is going to be something that is so valuable for everyone listening. So again,
I appreciate
it has
that.
been an absolute honor having you here.
Thank you.
Absolute honor of a conversation.
The honor is mine. And I can't wait for God to grant me the possibility to be put in a position to help the next wave of filmmakers in any shape or form. But if they are authentic in who they are and noble within their purpose on why they're doing it, I think they're going to be successful in more than they can imagine, to be honest. But doing it for motives that are not conducive of growing as a person, it'll be a difficult ride. But the honor is mine. It really is.
Thank you so much.
And I think they're very lucky to have you on this show.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.